Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by Next Gen Purpose, hosted by me, Justine Reichman. Every Tuesday, we serve up thoughtful conversations with founders, sustainability leaders, and community organizers who share their stories and missions within the regenerative food sphere. It's all about boosting forward-thinking folks and brands working to make better for you and better for the planet food more accessible. Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. With me today is Asha Caroll. She is the founder of Phasey, which is such a great product. I'm so excited for everyone to learn more about it if you're not familiar with it. Asha, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Justine.
It's my pleasure. And, this product is personal to me because I've struggled with PMS and all sorts of things that I feel like I'm debilitated for 3 weeks out of the month, before, during, and after. So for those folks not familiar with Phasey, can you just give us a little intro as to what Phasey is?
Sure. Phasey makes functional foods for better periods, better sex, and better moods. And our functional pantry staples are designed to support people at every phase of life and of their cycles. And it was important to me that in building out our product lines, that these products were truly pantry staples, like I said, something that could easily be integrated into our lives and to serve as that support when we most need it.
Oh, and there's nothing like that at this moment. Everything is, you have to take a pill and that has a side effect, or you take hormones and that has a side effect. So to be able to have something and to be able to incorporate it into your life, that's a food that's healthy, that's better for you, that is not going to leave you with additional side effects, is such a gift. It's a gift. It's a gift. So I'm curious, let's start at the beginning. What inspired you? What is it in your background or in your life that inspired you to start Phasey?
Well, I come from an unconventional background in that I worked for years as a professional opera singer. So I have 2 degrees in opera, but I also graduated from my undergraduate program at Carnegie Mellon during the recession. And at that time, opera companies were struggling to keep audiences in attendance. It was a tough time. A lot of opera houses were closing. And so I developed an interest in marketing to understand younger audiences and to try to figure out how to encourage their attendance and participation in that art form. My interest in marketing led me into work in food marketing in early days. I'm going to date myself for a moment and say that at the time, bloggers from online were beginning to transition to Instagram as a place to connect with their followings. And so I was early to market and worked with major natural foods brands to help develop their influencer partnerships and programs. So out of that, I grew my first business, which was a vegan baking kit, first to market. And it was actually during the time running that business that I first really was met with hormonal challenges of my own. You can imagine with the perfect mix of ingredients there, of the stress of having a business and the long hours, lack of sleep, my hormones said, hey, wait a minute. And I had to take time to evaluate. So when I transitioned out of that business and took a bit more time to focus on myself, my hormones were the place that I started.
And so why did you choose to get into food as a result? There's so many options for you. You could have gone to the gynecologist or the hormone doctor or whatever and taken a pill. And maybe you did, but then it led you here. So I'm wondering how you took the leap from there to food and what that journey was like.
Yeah. And, I did, I visited everybody, and I personally really believe in an integrated approach to healthcare. And so for me, it wasn't an either or, but it was that I'm visiting the gynecologist, I'm learning more about my hormones. But I began working with a registered dietitian.
Mhm.
And I began working as well with an herbalist who specialized in women's health. And at that time, I was making the transition. I was moving from being full-time in New York City, had just bought a home in Vermont. And so I was able as well, I think, to learn a lot. There's a great culture of herbalism in the part of Southern Vermont where I have a home. And it was there really that I started to I already had thought about food as medicine, so to speak. But I'd been thinking of it in this functional capacity of, what can help my energy levels? What can, help sustain me through long days? But I hadn't thought about that relationship between food and, I was looking at food in the bigger picture of my body, but I hadn't yet really worked using food as a tool to support, in this case, my endocrine system and my reproductive health. So it was through the work, through the dietitian and the herbalist, that I began using food and herbs. And for me, it was really that pairing initially where I started to find some relief for period pain and for loss of libido and for some hormonal mood swings and symptoms that I was experiencing. I was fortunate to have the support of my gynecologist and my doctors as well in exploring that as a part of my care plan.
That's amazing. And I think that's such an important journey because to share rather, because so many people experience that. You're not alone. I've experienced it. So many people do. And so being able to innovate and build out a functional food company, as you're referring to, which I'd love you to just talk about a little bit more, because, I want to make sure that whether it's our listeners or our viewers, we all have the same access to the vernacular. We all are on the same page as to what it means. So, if you could share a little bit about what that means to you and sort of your place in that space and what it was like
Sure.
to get into it, and because it's a newer space in the last number of years,
Mhm.
excuse me. And I think that there's a lot to learn about it and what it actually means. So I'd love you to just share that.
Sure. So I would argue that functional foods have been a part of our culture, even in Western culture, for longer than most people might realize. And I say that because, so part of Phasey's aesthetic is really inspired by the 1960s and the 1970s, or as I say, a critical moment when reproductive health and reproductive rights were under scrutiny on the national level, and where there was a conversation brewing not so different from what we see today. So I'm really fascinated with that era from an activism standpoint and a historical standpoint, as well as nutritional. But we look back and people were using granola bars to help sustain their energy between meal times. We look far back longer than that, and we see people using coffee or caffeinated tea as a means of increasing their energy or adjusting their mood. I need not list all the tropes or phrases, about coffee and productivity. But in fact, we do have some of these substances or these foods built into our culture and maybe the way that we think about how our bodies function. But you're right, it's only been recently, and I would say just really over the course of the last decade, where we've seen a marriage between functional food, as we've known in cultures like the Ayurvedic, or which we draw in heavily in Eastern cultures, where food has been a means of medicine or a means of body support.
I was actually just going to ask you that because it's not
Yes.
just about fixing a problem. It's about being prophylactic. It's about maintaining a healthy body, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why I always struggle with food as medicine, because it's the same way we go to the doctor when we have a problem versus going to, make sure that we are healthy and to maintain, watch things as we evolve, as we age, and just want to make sure that we catch things before there's a problem. So
yes, it can be tempting to, I think that especially as it seems to me like in our culture, things just keep getting, with the advent of, recent technologies as well, things get faster and faster and faster. And that there can be that pressure to feel like we need to keep up or to search for that quick fix. But I do, and this is core to the way that we think about things with Phasey, and really just core to how our hormones work, is it's sustained actions that we know help us see the most impact on how we feel and how we function. But to me, when I was first addressing this in my own life, the idea of sustained actions felt overwhelming. I wanted that quick fix. I wanted that thing, that was going to just make me feel better. So that kind of mentality actually inspired some of our first products. And that was, we saw these issues where there was a quick fix or a few quick fixes on the market traditionally, but there was not a sustainable solution. There was not a ritual or a routine that people could easily incorporate into their lives. I wanted to be aware of the time sensitivity that we all have, that we do have finite resources of time. We also want to have fun with our food and our rituals. And I really sought to incorporate all of those values into our products.
I love that. And I think that it's really, I like when you talk about being sustainable for one's life, right? Because I think that otherwise it's like we feel okay, just okay. And we take that because it's better than when it's not okay. So if we can incorporate a functional food like Phasey, etc., into our routine and make it a ritual, we may have a greater opportunity to feel better longer. And as you said, more sustained. And not have those ups and downs from our hormones, from lack of, you're not happy if you're not feeling good, right? I mean, that in effect, I'm not going to say you're going to be depressed, but, we want to feel good. And when we're not feeling good, we can't do as much. It's a distraction. And frankly, it doesn't feel good. I mean, I'm telling you, I lost like 3 weeks out of every month because I was tired beforehand, tired during, and tired after, which is just not sustainable.
That's right.
So, had I been able to do that, that would have, and I could still do that, could be a great way to make a great shift, incorporating something that's going to give me a benefit and allow me to, get off whatever I take for it and have less side effects. So I think that that's so great. And I'm curious, you went into, when you were planning this product or thinking about it, was it that you wanted to go into the functional food space? The positioning of it, because there's so many places you could have gone with it. Why functional food, and how come functional food?
I launched this business. I launched Phasey in 2019, late 2019. So shortly before the pandemic changed all of our lives. But at the time, we were seeing a huge boom in the mainstreaming of wellness. And in the mainstreaming of food as wellness, of smoothie culture, of fancy, the evolution of avocado toast. It was kind of like next stage wellness, where many of these concepts that had been a part of the natural foods community for decades were starting to mainstream into, what I'll call out my own generation, into millennial culture, first in cities like LA and New York, or further yet in Australia. But we were seeing it start to come as well to the center of the country, and to, more rural areas. So there was a wellness boom. The numbers reflected that if you, look at the natural foods market. And there was a greater conversation. I've always been interested in like where the conversation is gravitating, or gravitating towards. And so in 2019, and I would say even a couple of years predating that, there was this wellness explosion. And I saw a lot of women and a lot of young women participating in the conversation. And really trusting consumer brands over things like traditional medicine, or trusting consumer brands over conversations that they might be able to have with people in their inner circle. Kind of that disclosure that we often do on social media, where I'm like telling something to an audience of people I don't even know, instead of sharing it with my close friends. There's that sort of replacement for community that people can find there. So I saw a convergence of a trend in a market and a gap in conversations that people were having in their day-to-day lives, sort of a loneliness even. And I wanted to create a product that could be fuel for a community. And I wanted to create a product that could take the trust that I was seeing people start to take in consumer brands and lead that responsibly toward actions that may bring about greater awareness and access to care even for people's reproductive health. So I was set out to do something big, and it happened to be that I had experience in the food space. I also knew that food could be an excellent vehicle for driving conversation and for community. And so that's how Phasey was born. I knew there were lots of ways we could go, but I knew that food was the place to start that conversation because people were already there and they were already listening. But at the time, people were not talking about food and their menstrual health in the same national conversation.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think that it's really interesting and it's really insightful for people to hear as other founders build their businesses, as people understand what is functional food and how you developed it and what was going on in the space at that time and what's going on now, because a lot of these things are really taking a large space, a large part of it, and there's a lot of benefits to this. So the more we can share that, and equally the inspiration behind it, because it was your own personal story, I think I hope it will allow some of our listeners and viewers to both be inspired, but also get curious. So I appreciate you sharing that. So Asha, I'm curious, you're still working full-time, and a lot of people would be overwhelmed by that, intimidated by that, and would feel like they might get their side hustle on until it takes off and then move, right? I'm curious where you are with this and what it's like for you, because it seems like a lot. And I'm curious, just currently, what's the plan?
Yeah, great question, Justine. And it's one that I get asked a lot. In fact, Phasey did not start out as my side hustle. In fact, after my first business, I was working full-time in consulting in the influencer marketing space. And at the time, began getting inspired with some political work and some issues advocacy. So I was already plugged in on the social good side and used that to inform the development of the business. But in fact, I worked full-time on Phasey while I was developing it and launching it. And I intentionally made the decision. It was what I learned during the development of Phasey that helped to inform the next phase in my career. And that was, I became exceptionally interested in the national conversation and in the public narrative about our mental health, our physical health, and what community connection and conversation can do to improve outcomes for all of us across a variety of health conditions, as well as a variety of body systems. So it was really that work that Phasey led me to that work. And at the time I made the decision, I actually, it was around the same time that I was launching Phasey that I was also beginning full-time work in the space where I am today. So it's been an evolution. It's been an exciting evolution. And really for me, it allows my my work in the public health field to influence the way that I see Phasey's impact. And likewise with Phasey, I'm so fortunate to be able to do still just work, you know, learning about our customers and learning about what those needs are. They're a very vocal group, and we love that. And using that to then help inform large scale, you know, population level solutions that I'm working on during the day, so to speak.
So are you doing the day-to-day for Phasey as well while you're working full-time?
No, I'm fortunate to have a wonderful small team who drives Phasey forward. And I'm grateful to be in a strategic capacity with my team. So kudos and shout out to our operations team who really oversees all of the exciting activities that make Phasey operate the way that it does.
So I think it would be interesting just to share, because we do have other founders listening that might, you know, do something similar. What does that look like for you? Does that mean that you had to bring in a president and an operations person and a finance person, and that as founder, you maybe are on the board, or however, you know, what does that look like for you?
It was important for me to realize that there might be other people like me out there who have more than one interest. And in fact, I think it's only allowed us to become stronger as a business. So, you know, not every role needs to be full-time or in-house. Sometimes having those key strategic partners who really just get you and your mission can be really important. So that was a decision that I'll never regret. It's just the talent that we've been able to align with and partner with has been incredible by you know, just learning what people are interested in and saying, well, that's cool. Are you interested in what I'm interested in? And kind of striking up those common goals.
Well, I think it's really interesting also, and kudos to you for being able to do multiple things at one time, make them integrate so that you can have access to or the ability to do more than one thing, but also that support each other. So they're not, you know, completely on opposite ends of the spectrum. One supports the other, and I think that it's very smart. And I love the way that you've incorporated and surrounded yourself with the resources you need, very similar to the way my philosophy is. And I think it's great to be able to share that, because so often people think that when you get a business going, there's one way to do it, or there's a right way to do it.
Right.
And I'm not talking about incorporating and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the messy stuff, the scrappy stuff, the way that we put together a business that meets and fits our goals and objectives, but equally allows us to create our own personal objectives and goals, right? So we have the business goals and objectives, and then our personal goals and objectives. And neither one do you want to fall short down on, because then you're not doing anything well. But this seems like a recipe that you've found and used that allows you to do both quite successfully and synergistically.
Thank you, Justine. And I'll say too, you know, I know that there are multiple ways because I've been there before. When I started, you know, with my first business, I thought there was just one way. And I followed the roadmap that I thought that everybody was following. And what I learned there was, you know, there were parts of my business that I, you know, enjoyed doing and were, you know, core competencies for me. And there were other parts of the business where I knew that there were other people who would be best suited in those roles. I also really was drawn to other startup founders and other people's creativity. And, again, like, I'm so glad you asked, because I still got questions about this. And it's like, well, how do you do it? How's your team structured? And in fact, the way that we really do think about it is in terms of people's competencies, or their pillars of
We do the
expertise,
same thing.
organization. And within that, we're able to, have a business where people are truly doing work that they enjoy. They're not just, there because I said, it's going to take 40 hours a week to do, this and this and this and this. We hired experts, and continue to, in their respective areas. And that those are areas that they're passionate about. And if that means that they have their own business, or if it means that, they're working in other consulting capacities, I just want to bring the best talent to our team, that we possibly can.
I couldn't agree
Have a
more.
culture of creativity, of course,
Yeah.
and growth. That's an important one for us recently.
Well, I think just to, us, sort of share with you, we do the same thing. And I think it's super smart, because I think people do their best work when they are doing something that they are passionate about and that they do well. When people struggle or they're not liking it, I'm not saying everything's easy. But when it's not your core competency, is much more frustrating. And I think the ability to not have people clock in, so to speak, but to be able to be responsible for the work that they're doing, and the fact that they love it just inspires them and motivates them. So you create a much more robust team, because people are passionate about what they're doing. They're passionate about the product or the company, and they're self-driven as a result.
And I think it becomes a more collaborative team as well, which is something that is so, as I continue to talk about community and connection and conversation, that's also what's so important to me, not just that we're driving those values within our customer community, but driving those values within the business.
Well, to that point, I think that, I don't know if you feel this way, but often I bring experts on things that are not my core competency. So I do that because they have the information, the expertise, and I can rely on their direction. And without having that information, I would be going in all different directions and maybe not making the best choices. But by surrounding myself with these experts, I'm able to make a more informed choice, get better direction, and do things more successfully.
And to focus on the things that you love, I'm sure, which is also for me, I mean, why are any of us in this? It's hard work to own a business, and it's hard work to grow a business. But
Yes.
I think love is absolutely at the core of it for me.
So I'm curious, what's new and what's next for you? I believe I heard there's something exciting in the pipeline.
Yes, I'm so excited to share this with you and your listeners. And that is that our best-selling product, period chocolate and sex chocolate, which are now currently available in single-serve truffle form, that we are releasing full-size chocolate bars for period chocolate and sex chocolate, respectively, at our customers' request. This has been something people have been asking for since day one. It's been really exciting to get to grow the truffle side of our business, but I'm really looking forward to bringing period chocolate bars and sex chocolate bars to our customers. I'm already, I'll tell you, it's been a dream of mine, and it's exciting that we're now being able to share that with everybody else.
Well, I can't wait to try the product myself.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to try those and share them with friends, because I think one thing is to get that, to get the feedback from others. And to that end, I'm curious, outside of sharing them with friends and getting feedback, what other ways did you test these out with other people to see the effects?
I'm a big believer in the focus group and of sustained relationships with the people who are testing our product. So that was something I'd started with in early days. If we go way back to the beginning of Phasey, I initially wasn't sure if it was going to be a business or just a fun hobby that I had that I shared with my friends who increasingly were asking me. I was mixing chocolates in my kitchen as a hobby and stirring in adaptogens and CBD. And, that quickly scaled. And there was also demand, throughout my community and then communities beyond that. So it really became something larger than what I'd initially envisioned. And then I built the business around that to make sure that these products could reach as many people as possible. So the testing piece has been core throughout all of it. We have dedicated focus group participants who regularly sample and provide feedback on our new products. And it's been really interesting. We've gotten to work with them throughout different phases of their lives. When I started, a big group of my focus group testers were, they were really focused on their periods or on their libido. And that's how we built out the product line. But now a lot of these folks are, heading into a new phase of life as parents, as birthing parents, as moms. And that invites a whole new hormonal conversation. So, like our Nido instant mood milk came out of that conversation. And that was a product that could accommodate moods, whether it's through normal hormonal ups and downs, or it's through postpartum, or even into menopause. That's been a product that we designed so that it was safe and easy to take at each of those phases in life. And we wouldn't have known that the demand was there, if not, of course, first for the customers, but second for our focus group participants who said, hey, loving all the products that we're trying. Have you thought about building a product for X? So they've been really key as well, just to my understanding of our product development, where I still have a great deal of oversight.
Asha, I feel like we could talk for ages about this. I have so many questions. So we may have to bring you back for part 2.
Oh, I wouldn't say no.
Okay,
Really
wonderful. So out of curiosity, just remind me, when is this new product launching?
In the summer 2023.
Okay, so that's soon. Okay, so in the meantime, how can our listeners and our viewers access your products? Where can they find them?
You can find our products online at www.phasey.co. You can also find us on Instagram at phasey.co, and you can find us in small, medium, and large retailers around the country, from Urban Outfitters to over 400 small independent retailers, ranging from beauty and lifestyle boutiques to grocery markets and co-ops.
Wonderful. Well, we will make sure to throw that in the show notes. And I'm so pleased to have had you on. I appreciate your time and you sharing your story, your journey, and your inspiration with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Justine. And it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for doing what you do.
So Asha, so before we, head off, and I really appreciate you again joining me today, for those listeners, as viewers that tuned in for the whole podcast or videocast, is there a special promo code we can offer them?
Yes, you can use the promo code NEXTGEN15. That's NEXTGEN, GEN 15, to receive 15% off of your first Phasey order.
Thank you for that. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for digging in. To learn more about these stories, you can access the show notes at nextgenpurpose.com/podcast. If you like what you just heard, head to Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your listening to hit subscribe and leave us a review. To join the conversation, follow us on Instagram at essential.ingredients and check out our weekly newsletter for your dose of food industry info. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel for videocasts of each episode and give this episode a like while you're there. You can also connect with me directly at justine.reichman on Instagram and the real Justine Reichman on TikTok. See you next week.